What if the path to true universal harmony isn't about self-sacrifice or, conforming to some pre-approved moral checklist?
What if it's about something far more radical?
Exactly. Something like a deep, uncompromising self-definition.
That is the central and I think profoundly counterintuitive question we are tackling today.
It really is. I mean, every culture, every family, every institution we encounter seems just marinated in this imperative to be selfless.
Right, to prioritize the needs of the group.
Yeah.
And to view the individual's deepest desires as, well, as selfish liabilities that have to be tamed.
Or suppressed entirely for the greater good. We're conditioned to believe that fitting in is the moral high ground, that the universe somehow rewards this generalized altruism. But what if that entire moral framework, this really deeply ingrained belief that we have to twist ourselves into a shape determined by external demand?
What if it's all based on a fundamental miscalculation?
A geometric miscalculation. It sounds almost blasphemous when you put it like that.
It does. It sounds blasphemous to conventional morality, but when you look at it through the lens of geometry, of systems theory, and even some of the deepest metaphysical concepts, it becomes computationally and philosophically sound.
So we're going to try and prove today that your most seemingly selfish impulses are not a problem.
Not at all. In fact, they're precisely what the cosmos is requiring of you to fulfill a specific, a necessary, and a completely unique function.
And this isn't just coming out of nowhere. This discussion builds directly on concepts we've explored before.
That's right. In our last deep dive, we looked at the transformative power of Karma Yoga.
Right. Action performed with non-attachment. We talked about it not just as a religious practice, but as a high-fidelity cybernetic feedback loop for alignment.
And we discussed how focusing purely on the action, not the reward, frees you, the agent, from being dependent on the outcome.
That episode was so critical, I think, in establishing the how, the mechanics of how an individual can act without being bound by ego or the external result.
Today, we're taking those mechanics and we're linking them to a geometric proof of why authenticity is necessary in the first place. We're moving from the practical loop to the underlying universal structure that necessitates your unique existence.
Okay, so from the how to the structural why. And to frame this visually for you, imagine a universe where giving and taking aren't linear opposites,
but nonlinear mirror images.
Exactly. Think of the universe's need, the demand for a certain asymmetric contribution or action, as a great void, a specific depression, a particular lock waiting to be perfectly filled.
And the individual, the unique, fiercely defined self, is the solid. It's the key. And the shape has to be utterly unique, otherwise it unlocks nothing specific. If all keys were identical, no locks would be necessary.
And the entire system would just collapse into redundancy.
It would.
So the central concept that unlocks this whole relationship, the geometrical foundation of our entire discussion today, is the physics of chirality.
Chirality. In Greek, it means handedness, and it's the property of non-superimposable mirror images.
The classic example being your left hand and your right hand.
That's the one. They are identical in every component, same bones, same structure, same joints, but they're fundamentally different in their spatial orientation. No matter how you twist or turn or rotate a left hand, you can never make it perfectly superimpose upon a right hand.
It's just impossible.
It is.
And crucially, a left hand only fits a right glove. This simple, elegant physical principle, this perfect fit, achieved only through a necessary, irreducible opposition, that becomes the foundation for understanding human purpose.
And the universe's demand structure. It's a profound leap, but it's a logical one.
It is. This deep dive is going to map that geometric principle directly onto our core human experience. We're going to build a converging argument that pulls from ancient metaphysics, molecular biology, and complexity science.
We'll be examining Spinoza's conatus, defining it as that innate, striving force of being, the engine of your unique existence.
And we'll look at James Hillman's fascinating acorn theory, which posits that we enter the world with a unique soul's code, or an innate pattern, kind of like an acorn holds the specific blueprint of the oak it absolutely must become.
And we are grounding all of this philosophical and psychological material in the biological reality of our decision-making. We're going to look very closely at the neuroscience of zero-latency intuition.
That fast, high-bandwidth processing of our System 1 brain, what we often just casually dismiss as a gut decision.
The inescapable conclusion we're going to arrive at is that suppressing your true, specific impulse is not a moral virtue. It's a computational error in the universe's grand design.
Geometry, biology, and cybernetics all converging on this one truth, that authenticity is not a luxury or an act of defiance,
but a necessary prerequisite for cosmic coherence.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Satosha.
And I'm Satosha.
Now, before we fully jump into dismantling this myth of external alignment, let me just take a quick moment. We just want to pause and express our deep gratitude for the amazing response to these deep dives.
We're seeing a ton of engagement.
We really are. For a show that we started with a simple idea.
Yeah.
Is there space for really deep research outside the usual campus settings or, the intellectual chatter of the smoke-filled cafes?
Yeah.
And it's so clear you're all as fascinated by these explorations as we are.
And your support, it directly enables this kind of research. Connecting ancient philosophy to modern complexity science, it takes a significant amount of time and resources.
To keep producing this content and to start creating high-quality illustrative videos, because we are dedicated to moving beyond just audio, we really need your help. We're trying to unlock funding for a specific tool, the Mosaic AI video editor, by hitting 1,000 subscribers across all platforms. So please, if you enjoy these discussions, subscribe on YouTube, YouTube Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Fountain.fm, or any other Podcast 2.0 compatible app or wherever you listen. Every single subscription helps us fund the tools that allow us to continue making content at this level of depth and clarity. Okay, let's unpack this core claim. We start with why trying to conform is not just difficult, but a fundamentally flawed and, impossible calculation. We call this the computational impossibility of external alignment, the lock.
The instinct to look outside for moral or vocational direction, to ask society, what should I be? It feels like the safest, most moral route.
It does. It feels responsible.
But philosophically and mathematically, it hits an absolute hard ceiling. The finite individual agent simply cannot compute the will or need of the universe through external observation alone.
That is a staggering claim to start with. You're not saying it's just hard to figure out what the world wants.
No.
You're asserting it's mathematically impossible for any conscious agent to do so accurately.
Correct. And the initial proof of this computational limit, it actually dates back to the Enlightenment's grandest failure, the Laplace limit and chaotic system.
Laplace's demon.
Exactly. Pierre-Simon Laplace in the 18th century proposed this idea of a hypothetical intellect, a demon.
And this demon, if it knew the precise position and momentum of every single particle in the universe at one moment,
it could supposedly predict the entire past and future trajectory of the cosmos. It was the ultimate Newtonian fantasy of the perfectly deterministic, closed, and computable universe.
So if the universe were Laplacian, morality would be simple. You just calculate the universal trajectory, find your specific slot, and perfectly shape yourself to fill it. Alignment achieved.
Precisely. It would be a math problem.
Yeah.
But modern physics, particularly quantum mechanics and chaos theory, has utterly dismantled this fantasy.
Right. The universe is not a closed Newtonian clockwork mechanism.
Not at all. It's an open, irreversible thermodynamic system.
Okay.
And critically, it exhibits sensitive dependence on initial conditions. That's the core principle of chaos theory.
This is the butterfly effect. The idea that a butterfly flapping its wings in Tokyo can lead to a hurricane in New York months later.
That's the macro analogy. But apply it to your own self-determination. A deviation in the measurement of a single variable, even by an infinitesimal amount, 0.00000. You get the idea.
A tiny fraction of a percent.
It would render the entire macroscopic prediction of the system completely invalid after a very short period of time. You can't predict the weather 30 days out, let alone the optimal shape of your own life 30 years out.
So, trying to calculate your optimal place based on observing the external world is like trying to compute a perfect mile-by-mile trajectory for a thrown dart that's being buffeted by a billion unpredictable air molecules.
It's a great analogy. The prediction limit is absolute. The external world is computationally opaque to you, the finite agent.
And that opacity leads directly to the logical absurdity of what you call the paradox of self-reference.
Right. The system trying to model itself includes itself as a variable.
Okay, break that down.
Well, for any finite individual, for you, the agent, to calculate what the universe wants from you, you would need to build a predictive model of the universe. But that model must include yourself. This creates a logical and computational problem. The system trying to model itself enters an infinite regress. The model must contain the model, which must contain the model.
Recursively, forever. The moment the agent tries to build a perfect predictive model, the model immediately increases in complexity because the modeler now has to be modeled.
The system gets bogged down trying to process its own existence within the dataset. It leads very quickly to what we call computational inertness or analytical paralysis.
You end up spending more energy planning and modeling your life than actually living it.
And here's the vital point. The collective want, that supposed universal slot you were trying to fit into, it's not static data waiting to be read. It's an emergent property.
It arises from the interactions of all the agents.
Exactly. So it changes the moment you interact with it.
So by looking outward to determine your shape, you're committing a category error. It's like trying to navigate using a map that is simultaneously being drawn by your own movements.
You can never get ahead of the drawing process. The input changes the moment you measure it.
This mathematical futility, it perfectly reflects the modern, often exhausting experience of trying to be good or successful.
It does, and it leads us directly into the signal-to-noise problem, Hayek's analog. Because even if we ignore the Laplace limit, the sheer amount of contradictory data makes external alignment impossible. That's the noise.
I think we all feel this on a daily basis. The external environment just bombards us with overwhelming and often contradictory vectors of advice and demand.
Exactly. I mean, just look at the conflicting pressures on you today. Biologically, your deep structure demands safety, reproduction, persistence.
Simple enough.
But then economically, the market demands relentless specialization, innovation, and competitive advantage.
And then culturally, society often demands generic conformity, radical altruism, and self-effacement.
You're being told simultaneously to be a ruthlessly unique competitor and a universally selfless conformist. These demands don't balance out.
They cancel each other out. And it results in constant decision latency, paralysis, and what we often diagnose as chronic indecision.
This is where we bring in Hayek's analog, referencing the economist Friedrich Hayek's famous knowledge problem.
Okay.
Hayek argued that no central planner, no single calculating authority, even with the best computers, can aggregate the dispersed, tacit, and rapidly changing knowledge of an entire society efficiently enough to set a coherent economic price.
The knowledge is too distributed, too rapid, and too fragmented across billions of individuals. And each one possesses unique, contextual data that can't be easily digitized or centralized.
And if a central government can't figure out the optimal price for something relatively simple like energy or wheat,
how can one individual figure out the optimal price for their life, their authentic vocation, their true trajectory? By aggregating all this dispersed, contradictory external data.
You can't. The individual cannot compute their authentic path by aggregating the external noise. The signal-to-noise ratio is simply too low. It's just data exhaustion.
And this chronic data exhaustion and forced conformity, it leads to a literal energetic decay, which brings us to thermodynamic tension and information loss.
Right. If you try to coordinate with the collective by suppressing your uniqueness, recent work in what's called thermodynamic coordination theory, TCT, suggests that for multiple agents to align toward a goal, they must undergo radical information loss.
Which means to gain acceptance, you have to intentionally become simpler, less complex.
Precisely. To fit in socially or professionally in a generic way, the individual is forced into what's effectively lossy data compression applied to their own existence.
Wow.
You have to compress your high-dimensional unique complexity, the totality of your conatus and your history, into a low-dimensional signal the group can easily process.
Like, I'm a generic high-achieving doctor, or I am a generic good person.
You strip away the nuance of your specific shape just to fit a generic social protocol. You reduce yourself to a low-resolution persona.
And this is a thermodynamic error in the cosmic ledger.
It is. The universe, being a complex adaptive system, is constantly seeking high-fidelity information, novelty, and unique, asymmetric inputs to drive evolution and maintain coherence.
So by fitting in, By offering this generic redundancy, the individual creates an ontological mismatch.
And you deprive the universe of the specific high-fidelity information it actually requires. You become a replaceable generic component, not the unique solution needed for a specific problem.
So, trying to be selfless by looking outward is computationally impossible, it's logically absurd due to self-reference, and it's thermodynamically inefficient because it reduces the total information content of the system.
The external world is high-latency, uncomputable noise. That is the lock.
So if we can't find the universal key outside, we must turn inward. Let's shift our focus to Section 2, the zero-latency signal of the internal, the key.
If the external world is opaque, noisy, and constantly shifting, the internal impulse is the precise opposite.
How so?
It's a deterministic data stream accessible with zero latency. It is not a random whim. It is a highly computed, high-fidelity output.
Okay, to understand the power of that output, we need to begin with the metaphysical core. Spinoza's conatus and the conservation of being.
Baruch Spinoza, in his Ethics, defined conatus as the innate, striving force of a thing to persevere in its being.
And critically, this is far more than just biological survival.
Oh, much more. It's metaphysical inertia. It is the persistent energy of existence, the force by which any given thing is what it is and strives to maintain that unique identity.
It's the intrinsic pressure of an entity to sustain and expand its unique self. It's the I must exist as this specific thing that comes before the I must do this action.
Exactly. The internal impulse is the direct, instantaneous manifestation of this conatus, attempting to sustain and expand the entity's unique geometry against the entropic pressure of the universe.
So Spinoza argued a thing doesn't desire because it lacks something.
It desires because the force of its specific existence, its conatus, must be expressed and maintained.
The impulse, therefore, is not a choice made by the ego after agonizing deliberation.
Not at all. It is the universe's energy localized in a specific mode. It's the universe's code executing through your individual hardware.
The consequence here is powerful and, well, radical. To suppress this conatus, to actively deny the impulse that defines your unique striving, is literally to dampen the total energy of the cosmic system.
You are acting against the primary metaphysical inertia. You are disrupting the conservation of being.
Which brings us directly to the psychological mapping of this concept in psychologist James Hillman's highly influential acorn theory.
Hillman. He took the daemon, the soul's guardian or innate spirit, and conceptualized it in a very practical way.
He did.
He posited that every individual enters the world with a unique daemon or soul's code that defines their destiny, much like an acorn holds the specific pattern of the oak tree it is destined to become.
So the impulse is the data stream guiding the organism toward its optimal ontological shape, the unique oak it is meant to be. It's like a GPS system for your specific destiny.
And Hillman's crucial distinction here prevents this from becoming fatalism. The acorn is deterministic in its shape. It must be an oak. It cannot choose to be a rose, regardless of how much external pressure is placed upon it.
But it is entirely free in its realization.
That's the key. It can be a magnificent, towering, structurally sound oak, or it can be a stunted, twisted, half-dead one, starved of light and water.
And ignoring the internal impulse, ignoring the guidance of the daemon, leads to the pathology Hillman called the loss of soul. The individual becomes a hollow shell defined entirely by external expectations.
The generic component we talked about in Section 1, the repression of the specific key shape creates structural incoherence, warping the destined oak into something unrecognizable.
So how do we prove this impulse is high-fidelity data? This brings us to the neuroscience of zero-latency intuition.
Right. We commonly talk about System 2, the slow analytical brain, and System 1, intuition.
System 2 is what we use when we try to compute external duty. It's slow, serial processing, resource-intensive, and it's susceptible to that external noise. It has high latency.
System 1 is the high-bandwidth parallel processor. It synthesizes a staggering amount of data in milliseconds. Your genetic predispositions, somatic markers, emotional memory, the organism's total history.
It's processing all this information subconsciously, running a far more complex calculation than System 2 could ever manage consciously.
And the impulse is simply the output of this massive calculation, arriving in the conscious mind with zero latency.
So the gut decision isn't some magical whim. It's the result of this parallel processing that bypasses the bottleneck of conscious deliberation.
Which is why research suggests that in complex, high-variable environments like real life, these gut decisions often outperform slower analytical ones.
It outperforms System 2 because System 2 is just too slow to catch the relevant signal amidst all the external chaos.
The internal impulse is high fidelity because it synthesizes internal reality, and this is rooted in interoception and prediction error.
Interoception being the brain's perception of the body's internal state, the certainty of the internal. It monitors hunger, heart rate, emotional coherence.
Yes, and according to the powerful predictive coding model of the brain's primary job is to minimize free energy, which is basically minimizing surprise or prediction error.
The system seeks homeostasis. It wants to minimize surprise.
The brain constantly generates predictions about reality, and when reality violates those predictions, it generates prediction error, which requires a lot of energy to resolve.
Okay, so when an individual systematically suppresses these zero-latency internal signals, for example, I feel I should move abroad, but society says I should stay here for stability.
They generate massive constant prediction error, or dissonance. This dissonance manifests physiologically and psychologically as chronic anxiety, existential dread, and alienation. The suppressed conatus creates internal chaos.
The internal impulse, then, is the system's urgent attempt to restore structural coherence and minimize that error. It's an internal correction signal.
And it must be followed to reduce psychic friction. To follow that impulse is not selfish. It is merely accepting the specific, high-fidelity data stream the universe has assigned to your node.
So you're rejecting the category error of assuming your slow, conscious ego knows better than the zero-latency processing that has synthesized your entire existence.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to introduce some intellectual friction here. If the internal impulse is all we trust, doesn't that open the door to profound moral hazard? I mean, what about addiction or impulses towards destructive behavior?
A critical question.
How do we differentiate the conatus from simple psychological pathology or societal conditioning?
That is the necessary challenge, and we differentiate them through two tests. First, the conatus strives to persevere and expand the entity's being.
Okay.
Addiction, spite, or external conditioning always lead to contraction and entropy. An authentic impulse, though it might be challenging, ultimately leads to greater structural coherence and energy within the system.
And the second test?
Second, the conatus is singular and coherent. It's the voice of the acorn. Pathological impulses are often contradictory, they're high latency, they require deliberation and justification, and they lack that clear, frictionless signal we just discussed.
So we'll get into the ethical guardrails later with Karma Yoga.
Yes, that provides the implementation.
Right.
But the core principle stands. The internal signal, when purified, is mathematically superior to the external noise.
That distinction between expansion and contraction is key. So we've established that the outside is noise and the inside is precise, high-fidelity truth. Now for the geometric proof. Section 3, Chirality. The geometric proof of authenticity. How does the truth of the self serve the needs of the world?
The relationship must be fundamentally chiral. The fit requires asymmetry. Let's just reiterate the chiral definition. Non-superimposable mirror images. Left hand versus right hand.
And we use positive and negative space to model this. The universe's specific need is the void. The individual's authentic desire, the conatus, is the solid.
And we assign parity. So let the universe's need, the void, be a right-hand mold. Your individual's authentic desire, the solid, is the left-hand key. The geometric inference here is absolute and non-negotiable. A right-handed void can only be filled by a left-handed solid. No amount of effort or rotation or generic compromise will allow a right-handed key to fill a right-handed void.
This means that opposition being the inverse, the mirror image, is not a conflict.
Not at all. It is the absolute prerequisite for perfect interlock and frictionless completion. It is the design feature.
This realization helps us navigate what you call the illusion of opposition, parity.
Right. The linear calculating mind, our system 2, which is obsessed with external alignment, perceives the universal need, give, and the individual desire, grow, as conflicting goals.
The universe appears concave, demanding. The individual is convex, expanding. We only see friction.
And to that linear dualistic mind, this looks like conflict, and so the moral conclusion is, I must change my shape to match the world's demands. I must conform.
But that's the critical error.
It is. We have to recall Kant's concept of incongruent counterparts. Kant used the left and right-hand example to argue that the difference between them is not in their content. They have identical internal structures.
But in their orientation, or parity. A left glove and a right glove can be perfectly described using the same molecular coordinates, yet they're distinct because they occupy space differently.
So applying that to our ontology, The selfish act of following your internal impulse and the selfless act of meeting an external duty may look identical in terms of the energy you expend.
But they have opposite parity, opposite orientation. They are the key and the lock.
Authenticity, therefore, preserves the necessary left-handed orientation. It is self-definition. It maintains its unique, non-negotiable shape.
And conformity, on the other hand, it attempts to twist the self into a right-handed orientation to match the external need, this external definition.
And this twisting results in a massive geometric dislocation. The key, by trying to look like the lock, ceases to function as a key. It becomes a blunt, generic object.
This makes the lock and key mechanism in biology less of a metaphor and more of a literal biological imperative.
It's literal, right down to the molecular level. Enzymes, which are the fundamental agents of change in biological systems, must maintain a specific, highly rigid, and inherently selfish chiral shape to bind with their substrate.
The universal situation they are meant to change.
Exactly. Without that specific, non-negotiable shape, they lose their function completely.
So the enzyme has to maintain its aggressive, specific structure. If the key relaxes its shape to be more accommodating or generic,
It loses its catalytic power. It loses its ability to affect the change the system requires. You must be aggressively, stubbornly, the precise inverse of the lock.
the universe needs you to be the specific, unique, left-handed piece.
And if you try to be a generic right-handed conformist, a self that tries to be defined by external demand, you become redundant, and a chiral blob that fits nothing perfectly and therefore catalyzes no meaningful change. Your very usefulness is predicated on your refusal to conform.
This idea is profoundly liberating. It shifts the locus of purpose. Purpose isn't found by hunting for external demand. It's found by rigorously defining the self. But the fit still requires a complete shift in perspective, a 180-degree rotation. The lock and key are geometrically perfect, but only if they are oriented correctly. This brings us to section 4, the 180-degree rotation, turning the soul.
The alignment is achieved by changing our vantage point. We cannot change the fundamental shape of the key, our conatus is fixed, but we can change the direction we are facing, the source of our data.
And this psychological maneuver is ancient. It's captured beautifully in Plato's description of enlightenment, which he called purifies in Plato's cave.
In Plato's Republic, enlightenment is not achieved by adding more facts or tweaking one's actions. It is described as purifies, the turning around of the whole soul.
Right, the allegory of the cave. The prisoners face the wall, watching shadows cast by objects passing behind them. The shadows are their reality.
And they cannot see the truth by merely analyzing the shadows harder or arguing about them more effectively.
The external calculations of what you should do, the computationally impossible data we discussed in Section I, those are the shadows on the wall. They are secondary projections, not the light source.
So the required psychological operation is this 180-degree rotation, turning your back entirely on those shadows and facing a light, the internal reality of what you must do, the impulse of the conatus.
It's a structural rearrangement of attention, a complete shift in the source of truth.
And this structural turning echoes across nearly every major spiritual tradition, what we call mystical echoes of reorientation.
Like the Greek term metanoia.
Exactly. Though it's often watered down in modern translations to simply repentance, as in feeling bad about past actions, metanoia literally translates to beyond the mind.
A structural reorientation of the will.
It is. It's the turning away from the external performance of virtue toward an internal alignment with truth. You stop trying to perform the role of a good person and you start simply being the correct shape.
And in Eastern philosophy, specifically Yogacara Buddhism, there's Parity.
A turning about in the deepest seat of consciousness. It's a profound psychological revulsion from the false dualism of the external perceived world.
Resulting in a return to the alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness, where the unconditioned seeds of reality are kept.
Geometrically, parity is the moment the agent stops trying to reverse prompt engineer the universe and instead allows the universe to run its code through them. You cease to be the struggling, high-latency calculator.
And you become the frictionless executed script. This transformation leads to the vantage point shift and wu-wei.
Right. The constant friction we experience, the existential anxiety, the chronic dissonance that occurs when we try to force our left hand, our unique self, into a left-hand mold mimicking external expectation.
We are geometrically anti-aligned.
When the rotation is complete, when we shift to the internal vantage point, the left-hand impulse naturally faces the necessary right-handed void correctly. And when this alignment occurs, the result is frictionlessness.
Or wu-wei, effortless action in Taoism.
And Wu Wei is not passivity or laziness. It's an intense, high-energy state of efficiency. It's the sensation of the perfectly shaped key sliding to the lock without any resistance.
It occurs only when the individual stops trying to calculate external fit and simply is manifesting their internal chiral shape.
The effort is not in the action, but in maintaining the correct internal orientation. The moment you follow the conatus, the universe provides the perfect substrate for that action, and the result is natural flow.
So we have the geometry, we have the philosophical grounding, and we know the orientation required. Now we have to address the real-world application. How do we maintain that dynamic alignment in a constantly changing, chaotic world?
This is achieved through Karma Yoga, reinterpreted as a sophisticated cybernetic system to overcome that external prediction limit. This is Section V, Kāryam Karma, as the cybernetic feedback loop.
And to practice Karma Yoga correctly, we have to start with the necessary acceptance of constraints, the tiny box and boundary conditions, Svadharma.
In the modern world, we are told we have unlimited potential. You can be anything.
Right, which creates enormous pressure, and it compounds that self-reference paradox we talked about.
The Gita counters this pressure by urging a deep acceptance of the constraints of your existence, the tiny box, defined by your specific body, your innate skills, svabhava, your current location, and your history.
In any system, you can't solve an equation without defining its boundaries.
And the box is not a prison. It is the necessary boundary condition for action. It is the specific shape of the key that you are.
The Gita explicitly states, perform the duty born of your own nature, svabhava, even if that duty seems flawed or insufficient, rather than trying to perform the duty of another.
That acceptance of constraints, the body, the skill set, is the first non-negotiable step in the cybernetic model. It's the only place where authentic, zero-latency action can occur because it's the only place where the conatus is fully embodied.
The key must accept its teeth, its grooves, and its specific metallurgical composition.
Once we accept the constraints, the next crucial step is separating action versus outcome, physical versus metaphysical. This is where the error of desire, the desire for the scoreboard, creeps in.
The core teaching of Karma Yoga is realizing that actions and outcomes exist in two different, often disconnected systems.
Actions are always physical, executing code, teaching a lesson, throwing a ball. Outcomes, however, are tied to metaphysical systems, reputation, wealth, influence, social status, winning or losing.
Okay, so think of a scientist working on a theoretical problem. The action is the rigorous execution of the experiment.
And the expected outcome, winning a Nobel Prize, is tied to the metaphysical system of academic recognition.
When desire attaches the outcome to the action, we lose the essential cause-effect relationship.
And we start adjusting our physical, present-moment actions based on the uncertain, high-latency feedback of that metaphysical system. For example, a writer stops writing the book they must write, their impulse, their action.
Because the market analytics, the outcome, suggest a different genre is more profitable.
Random external outcomes begin to govern action, leading to that computational inertness we discussed earlier. The yogi's focus, therefore, must shift entirely from the scoreboard. The reward, the fruit, the outcome, the phala.
The ball, the action itself, the karma.
That shift defines the algorithmic solution. Kāryam Karma, obligatory duty performed with complete detachment, or Nishkama.
Kāryam translates definitively as it must be done.
And BG 3.19 provides the definitive mandate. Perform work which ought to be done without attachment attains to the supreme.
This detachment is often misinterpreted as apathy. It's not apathy, it's deep, focused excellence.
Exactly. Nishkama Karma in practice means focusing all your attention on the present task with such sincerity and excellence that you find fulfillment in the process itself. Phala.
Regardless of whether it succeeds or fails in the metaphysical system of reputation or wealth.
The focus on excellence ensures the key maintains its precise, non-negotiable chiral shape, while the detachment ensures you don't distort that shape based on noise from the outside world.
This leads us to the most subtle and complex component of this loop, the practice of non-agency and divine feedback.
This is the peak of the system. True liberation requires renouncing egoic agency, that deep-seated, persistent belief, I am the doer, or karta.
Right, because if you perform desireless action, but you still cling to the belief, I, my ego, am successfully executing this duty, you will still bind merit karma, or punya.
And merit karma still binds you to the cycle of rebirth, to samsara, because you have to return to experience the positive fruits of your excellent actions.
The liberation promised by the Gita is freedom from all karmic binding, positive and negative.
The solution is surrender to a higher system. The core psychological attitude is God is the doer. Or, in our cybernetic model, the universe is the doer and I am merely the instrument.
You offer the action and the results to the divine system.
And the universe's response, the analytics, the market trends, the physical reality of success or failure, is accepted as absolute undistorted data. It's accepted as prasad, as grace or truth.
That acceptance turns the universe into a massive, immediate, and objective feedback loop for calibration. It provides the correction signal.
The yogi uses this data as an objective correction signal to calibrate their tiny box, adjusting their skill and refining their specific trajectory without the distortion of ego, without the I wanted X, therefore the data is wrong, or I am too good to have failed.
This approach converts binding action, karma, into non-binding action, akarma. You are refining the key based on the objective feedback from the lock, not based on your emotional attachment to the outcome.
And the wisdom of the Gita provides a clear developmental map, a 4 stages of practice roadmap for achieving this mastery. It moves from compulsive external action to true liberation.
The text structures this path based on the gradual purification of the individual's qualities, the gunas.
Recognizing that you can't just start at stage 4.
So stage 1, service orientation, Shudra. This is the necessary starting point, especially for those driven heavily by desire and external validation.
The practice here is very simple. Start with easy physical chores that carry little egoic weight. Prioritize physically serving someone without any expectation of payback.
So cleaning your workspace, running errands for others, or performing tasks no one else wants to do.
This phase is designed to establish a basic neurological association that action need not be driven by immediate desire or reward. It breaks the action equals payment link.
And it successfully humbles the ego. It allows the individual to feel that strange peace and untangling of life that comes from successfully finishing small, selfless chores.
It builds the foundational muscle of non-attachment by dealing with low-stakes actions.
Then stage 2, skill capture, Vaishya. Once the foundation of non-desire is laid, the focus shifts to focused excellence in specialized areas.
This is about intensely developing skills in isolation. The Gita refers to this specialized pursuit as yasna ritual actions performed as a skill-building pursuit without desiring the fruits of future success.
So you learn the skill for the sheer satisfaction of focused action, not for the dream of future wealth or status.
And this process enhances one's divine wealth, Devi Sampad. The individual learns to harness the deep, zero-latency satisfaction that comes from focused competence. You are refining the grooves on the key, making its shape sharper and more defined.
You're allowing the kanadas to manifest through a high-quality instrument.
Then you move to stage 3, righteous application, Kshatriya, the stage of the warrior, which Arjuna faced, deploying acquired skills ethically and judiciously, often amidst intense conflict or moral ambiguity.
The holder of skills, the competent key, has a solemn responsibility to apply them ethically.
This phase demands taking a righteous stance amidst internal or external conflicts. The core idea is that these testing situations expose the underlying truth of reality and force the agent to rely solely on internal guidance.
By fighting your own desires for payback, fame, or favor, the internal conflict, you unlock deeper truths and gain a lasting handle on desires.
The choice to act righteously, even when it's difficult, is the action that solidifies the chiral orientation.
This is where the geometric alignment is truly tested, when the world demands conformity, but the internal impulse demands a unique, difficult, righteous stand.
And finally, stage 4, riding the wave, Brahmana, the ultimate culmination, where Karma Yoga becomes a seamless lifestyle.
At this stage, the individual embodies Brahman, the system, and the kanadas runs freely. Actions are no longer mandatory duties done out of effort.
They're done effortlessly and spontaneously, often to set an example for others, which is called loka samgraha.
The knowledge that authenticity is necessity is no longer a philosophical belief.
It's self-evident. The individual moves from being a Karm Yogi one who practices the yoga of action to simply a yogi one who is permanently connected, living in everlasting peace and frictionless action.
So the performance of Kāryam Karma results in internal and external benefits. Internally, we get chitta-shuddhi and cosmic order.
The rigorous, detached performance of duty purifies consciousness, or chitta-shuddhi. It makes the mind tranquil, singular, and highly focused. This purification is, according to schools like Advaita Vedanta, the necessary prerequisite for jnana, or self-knowledge.
It makes the mind a calm lake, ready to contemplate the self, the Atman. The purified mind is capable of receiving that zero-latency signal without any distortion.
And externally, this process maintains lokasamgraha, the maintenance of cosmic order and social cohesion.
Lord Krishna emphasized this cosmic imperative by providing his own example.
Right. Even though he's fully enlightened, he continues to perform prescribed duties to set a standard, preventing the destruction of creation and the ensuing chaos, sankarasha. The enlightened must continue acting selflessly, meaning non-egoically, to exemplify the path for others,
ensuring the stability of the world through their perfectly aligned chiral action.
This wisdom is universally accepted across Hindu schools, but its ultimate efficacy spurred intense philosophical debate among the great acharyas. So let's do a quick Section 6, comparative synthesis of interpretations to understand the nuance.
Okay, so this summarizes the core tension. Is Kāryam Karma merely a preparatory means for liberation, or is it directly salvific?
For Shankara, Advaita, the proponent of radical non-dualism, Kāryam Karma is purely preparatory.
Explain that.
Shankara viewed action as something that inherently produces a result in the phenomenal world. Action cannot destroy ignorance, or avidya, which he saw as the sole cause of bondage.
So the obligatory duties are just instrumental means.
Their result is chitta shuddhi, mind purification. This pure, tranquil mind is necessary to receive and become steadfast in jnana, or knowledge, which alone grants liberation. Action prepares the canvas, but knowledge paints the picture of freedom.
However, for the devotional schools like Ramanuja and Madhvacharya Vaishnava schools, Kāryam Karma is viewed as directly salvific.
Right. Ramanuja, the proponent of qualified non-dualism, interprets duty as shashatva service offered to the Lord. Performing this detached duty for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord directly generates sattva, or goodness, and leads to the attainment of the Supreme.
So the action itself, purified by devotion and correct orientation, is a complete yoga.
It is. And for Madhvacharya, the strict dualist, Kāryam Karma is the method for earning divine grace, or prasada. It's viewed as complete bhakti, devotion. By performing prescribed activities with the intent of offering them to the Supreme, the individual attains the grace necessary for eternal communion.
So in these Vaishnava views, Kāryam Karma is a destination, not just a stepping stone.
That's a good way to put it. The fascinating synthesis here is that regardless of whether you view the action as a means to purification or an end in itself, all major schools agree that the individual must perform the duty born of their own nature.
Their kanadas, their acorn.
With complete, rigorous detachment, it must be done because it must be done. It is the universal instruction for embodied consciousness. Stop trying to be the universal answer, which is computationally impossible.
Instead, be the specific key that you already are.
Exactly.
So we've come full circle. We've synthesized geometry, neurobiology, and ancient wisdom. We started with the question of universal harmony. The core argument remains. The most selfless contribution you can make to the cosmic order is to be entirely selfish regarding your internal zero-latency impulse.
Because your authentic, self-defined shape, your specific, irreducible selfishness, is the universe's will viewed in a mirror. It is the left-handed solid designed to fit the right-handed void.
And by rigorously defining your own boundaries, your kanadas, your acorn, your tiny box, and maintaining detachment from the outcome with Karma Yoga,
you achieve the necessary chiral asymmetry required for perfect alignment and frictionless action, for Wu Wei.
This geometric proof, it fundamentally challenges our most basic assumptions about morality and purpose. It replaces the endless, exhausting calculation of external duty with the simple, immediate execution of internal truth.
What if the universe doesn't demand generic sacrifice or a low-resolution conformity?
But rather the audacious courage to be precisely and uncompromisingly yourself.
The universe does not ask you to compute what it wants. It asks you to provide the one thing only you possess. Your zero-latency data stream, your authentic asymmetric shape. That is your non-negotiable duty. When you stop resisting the geometry of your own being, you stop generating prediction error.
And the fit becomes absolute, a profound thought to end on. We encourage all of you to explore the principles of Kāryam Karma in your own lives. Focus on the excellence of the action, release the anxiety over the outcome, and see how the universe responds. The data is waiting for you.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the chiral ontology of self. We hope this geometric proof gives you a new, liberating lens through which to view your deepest impulses.